Hello, it's Gail here from Three Wise Crafters and welcome to my channel. In today's video I'm going to use the sunflower border press plate from Spellbinders. I decided to pull something out of my stash today just as a reminder that it's always good to use our older products, and because the weather's so bad in Australia at the moment I decided to do something with sunflowers just to make a more cheerful summery card. I'm also using Distress Oxide in Festive Berries, Spiced Marmalade and Dried Marigold, and my blending brushes here are specifically for my Distress Oxide inks, and I get these off Amazon because they're a little bit cheaper than your named brands and they work just as well. I also have some Distress White Heavy Stock trimmed down to a 5 by 7 inch card panel, as this press plate is quite large, as you can see. So I'm going to start off with some ink blending with Festive Berries, and I'm going to do the ink blending this way across, and I'll come about 3/4 of the way across my card panel. I just find it's much easier to ink blend this way than going this way for me. You might find it a little bit different, but it's whatever works for you. So why I decided to use this press plate as well is Spellbinders are having a sale on at the moment with some of their BetterPress plates, and you can save up to 40%. So make sure that you check out that sale. I'll have details listed in the video description below, and I'll have all the supplies listed in the video description as well. So I'm just going to ink up about 1/4 of our card panel here, and then I'll be able to ink blend in some of our other colours. And I decided to use the Festive Berries and the Spiced Marmalade, Dried Marigold, because they're brighter colours and I just needed to make a cheerful card, just to take away some of the doom and gloom of winter that we're experiencing at the moment. So I'll just bring that up a little bit more, and Distress Oxide inks are really easy to ink blend, so make sure that you give them a go if you haven't already. Now we'll keep out the inks that we use because we'll go back and blend them all in together a bit later. So now I'm moving on to Spiced Marmalade, and we'll just do the same for the Spiced Marmalade. Go about 1/4, so bringing it just up over the halfway mark and making sure that we blend that in to the Festive Berries at the same time. And we'll go back and blend in the Festive Berries again just to make it a bit more of a smoother transition. So as you can see, this ink goes on quite thick and it needs time to dry before we use the BetterPress system. Otherwise the ink for the black ink for the BetterPress will soak into our Distress Oxide ink and won't stand out as much. So make sure that you give it time to dry before you do your BetterPress ink. And that applies to any ink panel that you do. You need to give it time to dry. So now I'm just going to go back into the Festive Berries and blend that in a little bit to the Spiced Marmalade, just to make it a bit of a smoother transition between the colours. And these colours sort of blend really easy with each other, as you can see here. Now I'll end up going back and doing some more of the Spiced Marmalade just because I can see it's a little bit different. And I quite like that plate. It's quite a large plate, so you can do an A2 card, or you can just do a 5 by 7 and have a larger card. You could also trim it down a bit and have a slimline card. So the possibilities with that press plate are a little bit more versatile than what other plates can be. So it's a good plate to have in your stash. And as I said earlier, it is one of the plates that's on sale at Spellbinders at the moment. So make sure you check out that sale. So I'm now using the dried marigold just to create another color element in our family. And then I'll go back in and blend that all through. So I'm not sure if I've got a little bit of red on this brush, but it's okay. It just makes it look a little bit more textured. So I've brought it up, as you can see, about 3/4 of the way up the card, maybe just a little bit more, and that will just allow our press plate to come in from the side and up so far. So now I'm going back with the spice marmalade and blending that over the top of the dried marigold. And then that'll create a smooth transition between them as well. So this is our inked background that we'll use our sunflower press plate on. And we'll just let this dry for a little bit and do the press plate with some black BetterPress ink. So to clean off my silicone mat, all I use is my Spellbinders Mister Spray. And I absolutely love this spray. I didn't think that I would, but it's really good. It can hold a fair amount of water, so I'm not having to go and fill it as much. And as long as I wipe up and clean up my ink as soon as possible, I don't get staining. As you can see, there's a couple of stains on here, and that's because I didn't clean up my ink straight away. So that's just a tip to keep in mind if you use a silicone mat at all. Just clean your ink up first, and that will reduce the risk of staining to the degree that I've got here. You'll always get a little bit of staining if you're using red, pink or purple inks. That's just the nature of the dyes that are used to create those inks. So I have my BetterPress system here, our ink blended card panel and the sunflower border press plate. And I'm going to adhere my card panel onto the platen, which is your clear plate for your BetterPress system, and I'll just use some low tack tape just so that it's easier to come off. I find some tapes adhere to the card panel and tear the back of it once it's gone through the die cutting machine. So I just use some low tack tape up the top and down the bottom of our card panel, and making sure that it actually stays there. And then we'll put another one down the bottom. And it's easy to line up your card panel. You've got the grid lines on here, which you can see better now. So you've got the sizing on here, which is A2 and A7. And we're using the A7 card panel today. So we'll just line that up. And then that'll make it easier to line up our press plate in the position that we want it to go onto our ink blended card panel. So once that's there, we just need to make sure that because the ink is only on so much of our card panel, that when we flip this over, we have our press plate in the position that we want it. So I want mine to be slightly off center so that it lines up with our ink blended card panel here. So we can do that quite easy. And I think that this will give us the impression that we're going for, and you can reposition your press plate where you want it. And as this is a large press plate, it's going to adhere to the magnetic platform on the bottom, and it won't move on you as well. So you can line this up and just get a rough idea. Is it exactly where you want it? Moving your thing back and forward to have a look. So I have my black BetterPress ink. I've got the small ink cube today. I would recommend with a press plate this size that you actually have the BetterPress black ink in the full size ink pad, because it'll make it easier to apply your ink quicker, and it reduces the risk of getting your ink everywhere as well. And it's just a much quicker and easier process to have the bigger ink pad for a press plate this size. Now you could do any color for this press plate. You don't have to do black, but for the card that I'm making today, it will stand out a lot better. You can also hot foil this press plate. Now, if you're in Australia, Australia now has the glimmer hot foil system from Spellbinders that actually has an Australian plug. So I'll list details below on where you can purchase that, so make sure that you check that out as well. It's something that I have, and I actually carry it on my online store as well. So make sure to check that out if you're in Australia. So this needs to have the ink applied, and you probably will need to go back and forth a little bit just to make sure that you have applied the ink everywhere that you want it. I can see that it's a bit patchy in areas, so I'm just going back over it. There's some areas that I didn't need to apply ink, but that's okay. Just making sure that we get it where we need it to go. And then once we've run this through our die cutting machine, I'll show you how to clean your BetterPress plate so that you can reuse it again and again and again. Now, if you've like me and you've used your press plates for hot foiling and you foiled on the wrong way and you ended up with the foil on your press plate, don't panic. It will still work for hot foiling and for better pressing. So don't stress if that happens. I've done it and I can still use it. So we all make mistakes at times and not concentrating sometimes, or in my case have children that come and interrupt me and I forget what I'm doing and end up making a silly mistake. So I've got all the ink on there. I think I've missed a little bit over this side. That looks a bit better, and we'll run this through a die cutting machine and then we can see what it looks like. So this is what a card panel looks like after it's been through the die cutting machine, and how pretty does that look? So I actually had my press plate on this side. I should have flipped my cardstock around and had the ink blended starting from this side and the press plate moved over here to get it the way that I wanted it. If I turn it around here, then all of our poppies are upside down. So what I'll end up doing is I'll make the card design this way. So I haven't wasted the ink blending that I've done, and I think that looks just as pretty to do it this way. So I have my press plate on an old inky towel that I use to clean my blending brushes and other things, and I have some Stays On cleaner here. Ranger have an archival stamp cleaner as well, so you can use either the Ranger one or you can use the Stays On cleaner as well. Just make sure when you're doing it that you're daubing it up and down rather than going around in circles, because that will damage the foam top of your cleaner and you don't want to do that, otherwise all the cleaner comes out and you'll have a big mess everywhere. So just quickly go that over the top of the plate, and then I use another cloth to rub over the top. And because this is a large press plate, I may need to apply more of my Stays On, but you can see how it changes colour so that you know that you have the Stays On cleaner where you need it to go, and then just going over it. Now it depends on how much you like your crafting supplies to be clean. I like mine to be clean a fair bit, So I will go over this and do another application. So once you have your press plate cleaned with your archival stamp cleaner, make sure that you give it a spray of water and wipe that off really well. And that just takes off the oily residue from the archival ink stamp cleaner, and the stays on, whichever one that you're using. Both of those products have an oily residue, and you don't want that to be left onto your press plate or your stamps either. So I have the sentiment here that comes with the sunflower border press plate, and it has just a note on it, which is ideal for any type of card. If you're just sending a card for to keep in touch, or even as a thank you. Just because it says just a note, you can write a thank you message inside as well and use it that way. So it is quite versatile, this little sentiment. And I'm just using the BetterPress black ink again just to ink that up. And I decided, instead of doing the sentiment on a separate piece of paper, that I would do the sentiment on our ink blended card panel, and that just saves down bulk in the mail for those that are worried about postage costs. So we'll run this through the die cutting machine and see how that works. So I use the Spellbinders extra large die cutting and embossing machine for all of my die cutting, hot foiling, and for my press plates. So there we can see how that sentiment looks on our card, and I did it just above our ink blender just so that there's a little bit of difference, but also balance between the sunflower press plate and our sentiment. So I have my score buddy here, and I have Nina Solar White in 110 pounds. And I have trimmed this down to 10 inches across by 7 inches down. This will give us a 5x7 card base, and we'll just score this at the 5-inch mark. And then I've trimmed down my other panel as well that we've done the ink blending on, and our sunflowers and poppies. And then we'll be able to adhere it to our card base. And I use Nina Solar White for all of my card bases just because it is a thicker cardstock, the 110 pounds, and it just gives you a lot more sturdiness than some other cardstocks do. So this is our ink blended card panel, and I've trimmed 1/4 inch off two sides. And this just ends up giving us a nice little border around our ink blended card panel. And we'll stick this onto our card base with some double-sided foam tape. And I use 3M Scotch foam tape, or I also use Alton New foam tape as well. So I'll have it all listed below for you in the video description. So I have our foam adhesive all stuck on. And once we've removed all of the backing pieces off the foam tape, we'll be able to put down some glue on top of each of the foam adhesive pieces. And that just allows us to have a bit of wriggle room when we adhere this card panel to our card base. So I have some Gina K Design Connect glue in a fine tip bottle here. And I just find that that's easier for me to use to apply glue to my projects, especially the thin sentiments that are out nowadays. This makes it so much easier to apply glue and to be able to adhere them to your card project. So, and this just, as I said, allows you some wriggle room to be able to move your card panel if it's not quite in the right position when you adhere it to your card base. So making sure that we have it up the right way, we can then line it up with our card base and make sure that we have it relatively straight. It gets a bit hard for me to tell when I'm on camera doing this, but that looks pretty good. So as you could see, this was a quick and easy card to do, just doing some ink blending and a press plate. And as I mentioned earlier, this press plate is on sale at Spellbinders, so make sure that you check that sale out. So I hope that you've enjoyed watching today's video. If you have, please make sure to give it a big thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed to the channel, make sure that you subscribe while you are there. Thank you so much for watching.